Okay, happy birthday, Thomas Heatherwick. Today is his birthday, the 17th of February 2023, and we'll talk about his architecture. This is the man with this, rather, I don't know if it is studied romantic posture, is possible. He's an interesting man, but I wonder a little bit about certain things. This like this, frenzied hairstyle. Einstein sported it too, so like the image on the left, in my opinion, is dramatic. Yes, he looks Dostoevskian, but a little bit studied, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not sure he's very, very genuine in this, tense and rather provocative posture. This is my instinct, but I could be wrong, of course. Anyway, he doesn't look like. I mean, he has something that you would not easily identify with a with a British man. But anyway, Great Britain Pavilion, Shanghai, 2012. I like this work very much, and legitimately, it launched him, towards stardom. The seed cathedral. I like even the idea of a seed cathedral. I think it's very, very nice to dedicate a cathedral to seeds. And he designed it impeccably. I mean, when I say architecture should bring something new, well, here we have it. Who would have thought of any building to look like this? Now, if it is also a seed cathedral, even more so. I think it was a brilliant idea, and he did a great job. Not all his buildings, I think, but this is a peculiar building. It is a building, but it's more like a lyrical manifesto, halfway between architecture and design, or object design, because he didn't receive training in architecture. He's a designer, an industrial designer, but who has immense success now as an architect as well. Not everybody is seduced by him. I read some negative articles, even about a bus he designed or some other things. There is some flamboyance in his work, which some people think is a little bit forced. But this proposal, and it's quite adequate because it's for a world exhibition. So it's a building that it's part of that context to exhibit, a pavilion. This is the pavilion of Great Britain. Is it sustainable? Of course not. I mean, when we look at what humanity builds for some kind of a show, we realize how much we consume the resources of the earth. And even sadly, like in this case, for a rather short titillation, because most buildings from world exhibitions are destroyed, are demolished. Maybe this was demolished too. It's actually very sad and almost unexplainable, because so much intelligence goes into it, talent, work, materials, and so on, and then to destroy it. So in essence, this thing in these tubes, there are placed seeds. seeds that were collected in this so-called cathedral of seeds or seed cathedral. I like the idea very much. Now, of course, the Muslim, for example, would protest, would probably say, why not a seed mosque? Why a seed cathedral? So I think there is some legitimacy here to such a comment. But this, I don't know. I mean, there is even the sign of the cross. You can see here insinuated the cross. Here we could debate a little bit. What does the cross have to do, or Christianity has? What does it have to do with seeds? The seeds don't have religions. Nature doesn't have religions. So I wonder why he did it so. What is the meaning of the cross here? It's insinuated. Yes, so you see the tubes where the seeds are. It's a seductive, brilliant work, but it is showmanship here. A lot of showmanship. I like it very much, but I'm not sure about this insinuated cross. And then, of course, considering also the title, the seed cathedral. But if we consider the cathedral as some kind of a, spiritual construction that transcends specific, religious denominations, I guess it's okay. If the manifesto of the Bauhaus also was depicted, well, the cathedral of socialism, but it was the word cathedral. So, plus the cross is not ostentatious. It's not very, it's not very very clearly defined, but it is suggested there, and I guess it's okay. I'm not very sure about this, but I like very much the plan. You see in the plan as well the cross. I like the apparent disorder around the seed cathedral. I think is very well designed, modeled, drawn, and it shows, in a way, the plan itself that the center that the seed cathedral represents should make us think. It should make us think that those seeds are immensely important, and they are. Now, the rolling bridge in London, whimsical creation by this designer turned architect, but who never forgot to be an architect. It's a bridge that now is not yet a bridge, but it could become a bridge. And here it is. It's an invention, and it works. It's whimsical. It's interesting. He does have a great capacity to astonish. So if a boat or a ship, well, a boat rather than a ship on these narrow canals, would arrive in front of the bridge can bring itself upwardly, and here it is. The boat can advance on the water. It's a mechanism, a well built, well conceived mechanism. And since we love shows, it receives a lot of attention, of course. East Beach Cafe, this work is a little bit problematic for me. It's rather massive, and again, I think his appetite for showmanship is shown here as well. I mean, is it necessary for a cafe to be so, you know, flamboyantly, opulent? I mean, you know, look, it's a lot of effort here, constructive effort, in order to bring this, heavy part of the building to the building site. I mean, you can imagine the cost of this procedure and the cost of the construction. And this is how it looks like towards, not towards the water, but towards the street. Rather uninviting, no? I mean, it stirs up the curiosity, but it doesn't really invite you because it's totally blank. I don't think this is one of his best works. The interior, what can we say? It's a cafe. It's a cafe, but the building itself is rather, muscular, so to speak. Now, the visitor facility at the Bombay Sapphire Distillery in England, I like this work, with its echoes of Art Nouveau, plus its symbolism, because it is a distillery, so, it has to do with alcohol. And, this Dionysian, agitation, formal agitation, could refer to some kind of an intoxication. So you go inside the building and, treat yourself in a certain way, and then you come out and, a changed man, a changed person because of the intoxication and the architecture. But even here there is a, clear indication that we have an architect who loves showmanship and he is good at it. A hospital, cardiology outpatients building in London. Now, I don't know, is this some kind of a reference to arterial fibrillations? Well, no, this is not an irregular heart beating. It's actually regular, but as these pulsations, the pulsations, make you think, if it's a hospital, doing, a cardiology section of a hospital, I don't know. I mean, I had some troubles with the heart myself, and I wonder if I would go to such a hospital, to check my heart rhythm here, because somehow I feel that my heart rhythm would become even more, imbalanced in this building. I mean, it's not a soothing building. It's a building that increases, I think, the tension, the inner tension, and the angst. It's regular. At least it's a regular rhythm, but rather heavy. Now, the Hanging Gardens in Shanghai. This is a work I didn't see it there in Shanghai. I only saw it published, but I had some problems with this. And I think in general, I have some problem. Also, I recognize the talent, and I even like, his romantic, photographs and so on. But I think this is something demagogical here. To make those concrete pedestals to receive the roots of a fragile plant, be it a little tree or something else. But I don't know. I think these architectonic concrete pedestals are opposite to what we are supposed to do in order to give a chance to nature to come back. What I'm trying to say, I don't know if I'm inspired enough now to say it properly, is that yes, we recognize the great need to bring back nature, to allow nature to assert itself. But this human concrete, which pollutes, these concrete pedestals, to support, vegetal or plant fragility, to me is, I mean, I think it's a little bit demagogical, because I'm thinking of what Brâncuș said about the pedestals to his sculptures. Now let's imagine here that, well, the tree or the bush is not a sculpture, but could be seen like some kind of an artifact made by nature. And then we have the pedestal, but here the pedestal overwhelms the artwork. I mean, the pedestal overwhelms what it receives on top of it, what grows from it. And I don't think this is right, because what I see here, despite the apparent triumph of nature, is still the old triumph of man, meaning of concrete, meaning of the pedestal. And I don't think nature needs emphatic pedestals in order to show ourselves, our affection for nature. So again, I think there is showmanship here. It's the rhetorics of the building make me a little bit uneasy. Of course, we create now mountain-like or hill-like configurations, architectural configurations, and then we climb with the vegetation on top of that man-made hill or man-made mountain. But this mountain is made of concrete, and I think there is a problem here. If we truly love nature, I think we should reduce the quantity of concrete that we use, because this concrete is actually acting against nature. And so there is some kind of a paradox here. The building seems to proclaim the need for nature to have the upper hand, but on the other hand, I think the building is still proclaiming the power of man over nature. So I'm ambivalent about this building. I really find, doesn't matter in what picture I look at, I see these emphatic pedestals, concrete. I mean, just imagine, this piece, this emphatic pedestal to support what? A little bush? Was it needed this? I mean, on one hand, you could say it shows the desire of the designer to you know to build something very solid, symbolically as well, to show the reverence for nature. But I don't really see it like this. It's not a modest gesture. It's an emphatic. It's a bombastic architectural statement. And this bothers me because it shows that again is about anthropos, it's not about nature, it's not about the bush, it's not about the tree, it's not about the plant or the grass, it's about still about man and the ego of man, anthropos. I have a problem with this. I mean, look here at the top. I mean, this thing is giant to support what? And why does it have to have this triumphalism about it? Because they are triumphalist pedestals. Creative units for artists. This is an interesting work, whimsical, but and it shows great inventiveness inventiveness, and then it shows you know, he can do, it doesn't matter what program he works with, he makes something special, maybe sometimes a little bit too special. Towards the outside, the buildings, these units, which are art studios, show you know, a certain complexity. The skin of the building is, as you see it, it's metallic, it's wrinkled, and I like wrinkles, and I think we need more wrinkles in the world to show maybe sometimes the inner drama, you know, the passing of time or whatever. So I like the wrinkles, but what is outside is very different from what is inside, because inside there are no wrinkles, there are just white walls, white you know, surfaces. So again, I see something a little bit questionable here. Towards the outside, we see this you know, folded form, and it is metallic, and it is kind of interesting. You know, why did he choose the metal? You know, this metallic sheet to cover the building in this way, and it, with its folds and wrinkles. I'm thinking now, if Vincent van Gogh would have had such a studio, his art would have benefited from it. I'm not sure. It's again and again, Thomas Heatherwick cannot distance himself from an appreciable amount of showmanship. Now that you know, rift between the two sides of the building makes me think a little too about it. You know, why is it so? Is it about the, you know, the very common bipolar disorder that artists have? Maybe Heatherwick himself. It's possible, because as Faust said, in Goethe's work, alas, two souls are dwelling in my heart. Maybe Heatherwick knows something about that duality as well. The interior, I hope, yeah, you know, if you are in the interior, you don't see the artworks, you wouldn't expect the exterior that we saw. You know, it's a modernistic building structure, call it atelier or whatever, with white walls, you know, very clean and all the rest. And then comes the artist and agitates everything through the, you know, the crazy forms sometimes artists use. Just a second. So there is some kind of a schism here between the outside and the inside. When you are outside, you don't expect the inside to look like it does. When you are inside, you wouldn't expect the outside to be as it is. So we can talk about it. You know, does the exterior represent the interior properly, and does the interior represent the exterior properly? But what he does in a way is the opposite of what usually is done, because usually we do the opposite. The interior is agitated, wrinkled, so to speak, and the outside is rather Apollonian. As Tadao Ando said, Tadao Ando made once this statement, that he wanted to make an architecture that was towards the outside, like an artwork by Joseph Albers. Joseph Albers was an artist, even a master, you know, that ran a class at the Bauhaus, with a very, I don't know if, well, maybe Apollonian graphic works and artworks that's showing a square within a square with, you know, colored, but nothing agitating, nothing emotionally charged, more than, you know, whatever color he chose to use for those squares. But Tadao Ando said, that's what I would like towards the exterior, my buildings to look like Joseph Albers, and the interior like Piranesi. In the case of Thomas Heatherwick, is the opposite. The interior, well, if you make abstraction of the artworks that we look at now, just the building, it's rather, I don't know if Apollonian, but, you know, white walls, clean geometry, and so on. And towards the outside is not really Piranesi, but is more, you know, more unsettling and agitating because of the material he used. Although the material is, you know, uses the will of the architect in its geometry. I like that old bicycle there. It looks like an old bicycle, and old bicycles have the, you know, the quality of warming up anything through the, you know, simple design. So these were the ateliers that Thomas Heatherwick designed. Now we arrive at MOCAA, MOCAA, the Cape. It's a museum of contemporary art in Cape Town, South Africa. I like this work because I like this work mainly because, well, because he arrived at what we look at, and we are going to see more images. But I like the procedure he made. What he did, he subtracted, he chiseled, he cut. It's an architecture of subtraction. So it was an existing building that he sectioned, he cut, and from those cuts, he obtained these, you know, you could say crazy shapes. He is a very creative man, obviously, and you know, he did something unexpected with this building that existed. I use this method myself, and I like it, where you take a prism, for example, and you begin to subtract from it. You just cut, kind of like a god up there who, like a sculptor, who yeah, now I don't find the word in English, but I know it in Romanian. Cioplește. If someone here could help me with a British word or English word, um, that's how he worked here. And he obtained these were the results of cutting into cylinders that the previous buildings had. I like this work. It's original, and it's still the old building is still to be seen, but also you see the interventions of Thomas Heatherwick. There is some kind of a cathedral here too, no? Very much so. In fact, I wish the cathedral they are building now in Bucharest would look kind of like this, but no way. So here you see from the outside, you understand better how the old building was and what he did with the old building in order to arrive at what we looked at. Yes, it's an interesting work, and bravo to him. Inside, it is a wow building. That's how it is, and he's good at creating, such architectures which make you say, "Wow." Now, the rooms where the art actually is are rather banal. White walls, straight walls, not to irritate the artists. But the central atrium is interesting, is cultural, is engaging, is dramatic. A good strategy, and I think a good end result. In this case, he changed the strategy. The artist studios were inside, as I called it, Albers-like or Apollonian, and Dionysian towards outside, although not completely Dionysian and not completely Apollonian. Here, Dionysus is inside, and towards the outside, if you don't see the stomach of the building, they will say, okay, there are some cylinders there, but nothing unsettling. It's an interesting museum. University building in Singapore. Now this one, I don't know. I mean, maybe yes, maybe not, but rather not, in my opinion. There is a little bit of inflation of, there is still something a little bit bombastic for my taste. Uh, but and the plan also shows this, liking of what is bombastic. He can build anything, and the commissions he receives are generous enough to allow him to do whatever he wants to do. the flower motif seems to engage him in various ways when he does buildings. Here too, to an extent, is this an homage to nature? In part, it is, maybe too explicit, a little bit, maybe. Now, we work together with Foster and Associates for this Arts and Culture Center in Shanghai. I don't know. I mean, you know, as a poet asked, when anything is allowed, nothing matters, because practically anything goes. But Foster is not an architect of a Baroque, you know, state of mind. Heatherwick is. How they collaborated? Well, they did. New York's Hudson Yards, the vessel. Now the vessel looks very nice during the construction, and there were pictures, and there are pictures taken of the vessel that are very impressive, but it depends where you take the picture from. I will try to explain. This is a staircase to nowhere. Maybe these words make us better understand him. You know, a staircase which goes nowhere. Nothing wrong, perhaps, with a staircase which goes nowhere. No, I shouldn't say so. I don't know. I don't know if I'm inspired now to articulate what I feel like saying. I like this picture very much of this as he calls it, a vessel. It's labyrinthical, it's complex, it's visceral, but from the outside, it's very much like a giant object, like a vase, or like a Christmas tree upside down. When we are going to see the whole building, you'll understand better. I mean, I don't know if I have, I imagine I do. I don't know if I don't remember if I did this presentation after the vessel was finalized or not. Sorry about this. Unfortunately, I read that there were a few suicides that happened from the vessel. People threw themselves to death from one of these platforms. But we cannot accuse the architect for it, really, as some people suggested. No. I like the building, but this is my particular psychology, you know, or term, you know, I like it when it is still in the process of becoming, because my imagination could continue, and I like the asymmetry of a work that is not complete. Yeah, I particularly like this image. You know, it's very dramatic, and you can imagine, you know, the immense effort, financial, material. I mean, these pieces were made somewhere else in the factory and brought here. They are huge. I don't know. Again, he has an appetite for showmanship. Of course, these pictures are very seductive, but well, New York can afford it. New York can afford it, but New York couldn't afford it to finalize to an extent St. John the Divine Cathedral. They cannot finish that cathedral. Now, of course, any cathedral is unfinished, but to bring it to a certain level of completion, but they build this giant so-called vessel which goes nowhere. And you see it here, it's like a vase, but a huge vase at the level of the city. I'm not very fond of this building because I think it's too object-like. It's I'm not against symmetry, but here is a oppressive symmetry because of the centrality of the building is rather the centrality and the symmetry of an object, not of a building. Many great architects use symmetries. Nothing wrong with symmetry, but this is, yeah. Again, I mean, here I think he's more of a designer than an architect. But these pieces, the parts that compose the vessel, to me are very seductive. I like them very much. I wish they remain like this, or maybe a broken vessel. A broken vessel, I think, would have been better, but it's not broken, and it's hard to break it. I like it like this, where we see fragments of it. I like it very much like this. But when I see the finalized vessel or object, because it is an object, and I think a great building is not an object, but this is an object. And it's something of a giant metallic Christmas tree upside down. That's how I'm inclined to see it, but not at the level of fragments, if we can call these giant fragments. I like it very, he should have left it like this, like the kind of a Babel tower in reverse or upside down, unfinished. I think if he would have left it just like this, would have been great, but he didn't. Maybe he couldn't. I don't know. And here we see the crazy New Yorkers, and I love New York, and I love the New Yorkers, who are full of energy, and they dance around the vessel during the construction. It's construction. I wish I had other pictures. I think I have another picture, another PowerPoint presentation where I also show a picture of him advocating the project to the mayor of New York and the governor of the state of New York, but I guess it's not on this presentation. Now the Google headquarters, Thomas Heatherwick and Big, I don't know what to say. I mean, they are both very interesting architects and very creative, but I think they have an eye on success via a certain mundanity and commercialism, and this explains their immense success. Good for them. Otherwise, they could not have arrived at such commissions. And this was built. But what was strange is that at least after it was built, I didn't see so much mention of it in the media as before it was built. Maybe, I mean, I'm sure it was changed, the project, from the preliminary, studies, and maybe it's not so, I don't know, seductive, or maybe something was lost in the process of bringing the building to the to the final stages. Singapore apartments. Eden is designed to resemble a spine blade, simple vertical rectilinear planes with slim windows form the blade with generous garden balconies situated in between. This approach grants privacy for each of the 20 apartments. Only 20 apartments. You imagine what apartments, and you also imagine the price, and allows for a generous central living space that forms the heart of each residence. The unconventional concrete walls are molded with a topographical map of Singapore's terrain, which has been abstracted to create a unique three-dimensional texture. The focus on creating a garden for each apartment is a response to the disconnection between high-rise apartments and the lush greenery at street level in Singapore. Responding to Lee Kuan Yew's original vision of Singapore as a city in a garden, the design extends the landscape of Singapore upwards through the building with a series of hanging gardens connecting the interior living space with the outdoors, providing views of Singapore's green landscape. Sounds paradisiacal. And this is the building. I think it's a good tower, but how many? 20? How many apartments? 20 something apartments. I mean, on each floor, an apartment. The cost of an apartment is millions of dollars, millions. So who lives in this tower? Well, the privileged, of course. And the privileged in a privileged country, because Singapore is the Switzerland of Southeast Asia, you can imagine. It's a luxury building. Now, these people enjoy themselves, of course. Who wouldn't? But who are they? Probably, most surely, financial speculators, yuppies. They certainly are not poets. The poets would never live in such buildings. And again, flamboyance and the bombasticity. Because what I see here is a bombastic architecture. These balconies are, he tries to mimic, so-called petals. But, petals made of concrete at this scale, I have some doubts. The apartments are obviously, to be envied. I mean, and it's not a bad building. It is. It has qualities. It's interesting. It's well built. Is a rich building. Maybe too rich. Too rich because when God made nature, or nature made nature, because for Frank Lloyd Wright, he spelled God as nature, or he spelled nature as God. He was asked, do you believe in God? And Frank Lloyd Wright said, I do, but I spell it nature. So who created nature? We don't know. Let's say God, or maybe nature created nature. But in nature, a tree, bushes, or grass are not for the privileged few, are for everybody. Well, here is not the case. This verticalization of nature is very discriminatory. Probably Thomas Heatherwick didn't have headaches because of this matter at all. I find it, despite the aforementioned qualities, I find it rather arrogant. It's, imagine you are someone with a very low income at the base of this building, looking upwards. This building is telling you, sorry, this is not for you. But I guess injustice is very often related to architecture, and the architect is often in the service of those who can afford him or her. And this is a bathroom. Is it covered in marble? Perhaps. I mean, Somebody actually from Romania, Andreea Cutieru, who used to publish often on Arch Daily, but not lately, after surpassing many hurdles, the long-awaited public part and performance venue is on a set course to completion. This is about the next work we are going to see in New York City. The construction of the little island is underway, and new images by photographer Paul Clemens of Archie Photo show the undulating artificial landscape coming together above the Hudson River. So we leave Singapore when we arrive in New York City. Designed by Heatherwick Studio, the offshore park will feature 3 outdoor performance spaces, including an 800-seat amphitheater, as well as numerous pathways and viewing platforms, accessed via 2 dock-like pathways connecting back to the New York City shoreline. The structure comprises some 132 mushroom-shaped concrete columns that rise above the water, creating a new topography. The architecture studio worked with MNLA to design the green space, which will be home to 100 species of trees and plants. The project is meant to foster vibrant art, education, and community space, creating a distinct performance venue. At the same time, it also serves as a resilience mechanism against climate change, shielding the shoreline from storms. Now, wait a minute here, those 132 mushrooms shaped concrete columns are certainly serving the climate change, accelerating it, not fighting it. But, it's so easy to deceive ourselves with, inflated words. And again, just like in Shanghai, these giant concrete pedestals are actually an insult to nature. So let's not deceive ourselves. This is not how we fight for bringing back nature in the foreground. This is not how we fight against climate change. It's actually perverse to create these giant forests of concrete columns in order to have some grass and some bushes on top of it. I find it very questionable. I actually find that I see here a lot of superficiality. It's la même Jeannette autrement coiffée, as the French say. The same Jeannette, but with a different coiffure. In fact, what he built here is in essence very similar to what is built here, but with a different shape. Concrete, and concrete again. Yes, the shapes are maybe interesting, but they turn me off with the demagogy. It's really, I mean, look at that tree there, or 2 trees. I cannot easily accept this. Yes, he has the talent. Yes, he created something interesting, but again and again, I think he underlines the supremacy of anthropos, not of nature, the supremacy of man. Now we kill nature in the city, and now we extend the same mentality in the water. So we actually prolong the misery instead of fighting against it. Truly, this forest of concrete so-called mushroom columns, they are not mushrooms, Monsieur Heatherwick. They are not mushrooms. They are so-called mushroom concrete columns, very heavy, very emphatic, and very many. I'm actually tired of this human demagogy. Look at that poor tree there, all alone on top of the giant concrete pedestal. That's not a love of nature. That's a love of yourself, Mr. Heatherwick. It's the love of anthropos, not the love of nature. if you love nature, you would have abstained from advancing into the water with these many giant concrete, whatever they are called, mushroom concrete columns. It saddens me because there is talent here, there is work, there is ingenuity, there are qualities, but at bottom it's something almost fake. This is not love of nature. I'm sorry. You can make the forms, resemble flowers or petals, but in essence, you're actually promoting the same assault on nature like your predecessors. What do I see? It's again and again the triumph and triumphalism of man. Launch is, what is this, in the heart of Tokyo, 2019. It's a building, I think we are approaching the end here. It's a building that he proposed. I don't know if it was built in Tokyo. Well, again, we climbed the building with a green, but in essence, it's still man. Allowing poor nature to climb wherever we want it to climb, but not, we are still triumphantly asserting that man is the measure of all things. Look at all this glass here. Glass, glass, and glass again. Well, this glass means great losses of energy, means the desperate need of air conditioning. This is not a sustainable building. This is not a building which says, we are living at a different time now. We have to be careful with the resources we use, and we have to be careful with pollution. We have to be no. This is, again, la même Jeannette, autrement coiffée. It's just like this building, but with a different shape, a different coiffure. So he said, Thomas Heatherwick, it's been very exciting working on this project, and much of our effort has been focused on designing the public spaces that everyone will experience when they spend time in this new area. As many new developments around the world can be harsh and sterile, we wondered if we could provide a more human-centered alternative by integrating surprisingly intense quantities of planting and greenery. Well, he said it himself, human-centered. Of course, it is human-centered, and not any kind of human, but those with money. I mean, who would have the nerve to go inside this building? The immigrant? The unemployed? The student? No, this is another glorification of those with a lot of money. So who is that, human that this building is actually concerned about and addressing? Anyway, but we climb our buildings with nature. We first tortured the trees by cutting them down in forests. Now we torture them in a different way. We plant them on concrete slabs at various heights, far away from the earth. The scientist says that the tree is fine. That, there were experiments, analyses, and they arrived at the conclusion that the tree is very happy on the 10th floor of a building, if not on the 20th floor of a building, with its roots coming out of, some kind of a container with earth, but all having underneath a heavy concrete slab. But did we ask the tree what it feels? Of course, we say, come on, we don't talk with trees. It's known that trees don't understand us, because this is our conception that the tree is mute and stupid and doesn't feel anything and doesn't think. Well, this was not always what humans thought of trees. Anyway, it's still the supremacy of anthropos here. That's what it is. A more anxious anthropos, a more skillful in artistic expression. But all these buildings, in my opinion, proclaim the same old story. Man is the measure of all things. We can curve certain forms, we can make them petal-like, but in essence, we build for man, and we don't really care, you know, about the bush and the tree and the grass and the plants. No, no. If we care about them, it's not for them, it's still for us, to give us more oxygen, more ozone. It's still about us, not about them. That's what I think. It was not built as far as I know, but he builds other things in the same spirit. What do we see here in this picture? The triumph of man, the triumph of anthropos. And his building is not more modest than those towers behind. It's just another expression of the same attitude. You know, yes, we make the building more hybrid, more complex formally, but in essence, again and again, when you look at that giant glass surface and you know the energy that is consumed there in order to avoid the fact that the windows don't open, plus the function, because what else do we have there? A mall, what else? You know, stores for the terminal of all human activity, which is shopping, as Rem Koolhaas said. Concrete. Look at the flowers, look at the fragility of nature, and look what it stands on. Giant beton structures. I don't think this is real sensitivity towards nature. I like Thomas Heatherwick, the way he looks romantic, he looks sometimes possessed, and I like people who are possessed, especially by passion for art, for creativity, and so on. But this giant structure in concrete shows me that the affection for nature that he has its limits. That's it. Here I had another presentation about shop, but I will stop here because that's where the presentation about Thomas Heatherwick ends. Okay, so just a second, let me